Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of COPABE Play Ball podcast. COPABE, an acronym for Confederation of Pan American Baseball, and this podcast is going to bring you some of the best managers, coaches, players, and executives from some of the best baseball countries in the world. And let me tell you, they are coming from North, South, Central America, and the Caribbean islands, because COPABE represents those countries. And if you took a look at the Olympics and other games around the world, we get some of the best baseball countries to compete. And today, a special guest. What a way to lead off. Now, he's not a leadoff hitter because in the 2000 Olympics, he did a couple of runs against Korea to get him to the gold medal. He coached also played for Tommy Lasorda, a great honor, a great friend. He's a former major leaguer. He coached the minors, major leagues. He's currently scouting 2000 Olympic gold medalist. And also, he was the manager on the USA team for the World Cup 2011 and the Pan Am Games. Not forgetting what they did this year in the 2021 Olympics, won the silver medal. He was the bench coach and the hitting coach with Mike Scioscia. And let me introduce my good friend, Ernie Young. What's up, Ernie?
How you doing today?
Hey, listen, this is not unhappy. This is the first show. COPABE represents some of the best baseball countries in the world. Obviously, the United States, Canada, Dominican, Venezuela, we can just go Cuba, go down the list. There's some great countries there. So again, great leadoff guy. And let's do this. Let's start off with, what a story. I mean, from when you grew up all the way to what you've accomplished in the game. I mentioned just a few things. There's a lot more there, folks. But Ernie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this level, an incredible level of managing, coaching, and winning the gold medal, the silver medal.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and I just love playing baseball. And even to this day, I'll drive past different baseball fields in hopes that I see other kids out there, playing, because that's some of the things we did in Chicago. If we didn't have a team, we'd just go out there and play in order to get better. And I think that was one of the things that I enjoyed, growing up in Chicago, was the fact that, kids were playing baseball more, then than they are now. I went on to, play in small Division II school in college, and then got drafted by the Oakland A's, played 18 professional seasons, parts of 8 in the major leagues, and then was fortunate enough in 2000 to be selected to the 2000 Olympic team, which still, till this day, was a highlight of my career. And the second highlight of my career, I would say, as far as, playing, coaching, or managing, was the chance to be on the other side as our team was trying to win a gold medal almost 21 years later, to be exact. And that was a thrill. Even though we came up short, won a silver medal, still very proud of our guys. And, even saying how proud I was heartbroken for them, because I know the feeling that they would have had if we had won the gold medal.
Ernie, and, we're going to talk about that and get really in depth a little bit about, what happened in Tokyo. And, it was great success. And, but before we do that, how do you get to the selection of being a national team coach? I mean, there's so many great coaches out there, and you've had the honor not only to be a coach, but to manage Team USA, the best players in the world. Talk about how you got to that level.
Being a player, and I've always, had a great relationship with Paul Seiler, executive director for USA Baseball, and just developed that friendship and that passion for, USA Baseball, and that one common goal that, each federation should have. And that's, that country is always first. Accolades that the players may get is secondary to being a unit and winning the game. And Paul Seiler, he knew exactly that I was that kind of person. And it was, for me, there's been several key coaches that's been a mainstay with the organization the entire time. Rolly DeArmas is another guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've been so passionate, not that the other coaches weren't passionate about, USA baseball or winning a championship or winning a gold medal or whatever, but we were extremely passionate about that common goal. And it was, evident, even in victory or even in defeat. I mean, because, you become very emotional when you get really attached to the players and the team.
Yeah, and speaking about players, I mean, as a player, I imagine, once you put that uniform on, you got that, that thrill of representing your country, that leads to other things, and obviously led to you coaching and managing. The other part of this is assembling a squad of players from the U.S. or any country to bring the best players to compete at the highest level. Talk about how that was done, because that's not an easy process. Everybody thinks you just pick the best players. It's that easy. You bring them all in and you do well.
No, that's probably the most difficult process of them all, is gathering the information, which players will be that the organization would let, be involved in this. And even if the organization is on board with the player doing it, the player has to be on board with going and knowing that, he may be the best player on his team, but he may have to be a role player on our team, because, we only have one goal, and that's to win that game or win that day and then move on. Sometimes you have players that, if they don't buy into, what the organization is trying to do, and we've had several managers that's been really, really good about getting the players to buy in. And Mike was really, really good at putting it out there for the players to buy into what we were trying to do, what goals we were trying to meet. And, those are the players that you wanted. And we wanted players that wanted to be with us. I mean, we, unfortunately, we had some players that were kind of on the fence about going, or, should I go or shouldn't I go? And unfortunately, those players end up not going, because your organization or your federation has to have the players that want to be there, that want to put that uniform on and want to help the country win. I mean, if you have, and I'm not saying that those other players were going to be bad players or not going to be all-stars, but, you have to buy into a one goal. And that one goal for us was USA first, and then everything else is secondary.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Players have a lot to balance. You've got your minor leagues, and maybe they've got a level, maybe they're going to be called up, or maybe they feel like if they leave, they may not get an opportunity that they need to get in the minors. I'm sure there's a lot of things they balance. It makes a lot of sense. You want guys that want to be there. I remember Michael Jordan saying, it was the greatest thrill of his life. I mean, think about what Michael's accomplished. And he said it was the greatest thrill of his lifetime representing the United States of America. The other part you had here, you played for Tommy Lasorda, someone who said, give me the Olympic team and I'll win the gold. Then you play, you're coaching with Mike Scioscia, one of the best managers in the game of baseball. Talk about the things maybe you learned from both of them and some of the differences, because again, playing in the Olympics is a big difference between managing in the big leagues and managing in a short tournament like the Olympics.
So, I mean, Mike and Tommy, they both have different styles of managing. Tommy was really, fiery and rah-rah and kind of in your face. And Mike, he was, he laid out the game plan. And the best thing that I've taken from Mike in this, just a short period of time that I've gotten to know him, was getting all the players to, his words were being the best version of yourself. And I had never heard that before, but that was, that's unbelievable. to be the best version of yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. Just be the best version of yourself. And that was, and we had guys and that's what they did. They, we had Nick Allen. Nick Allen, he's going to be a good major league player. He's with the Oakland A's organization, AAA now. And that kid had one hit in the qualifying tournament. And then he comes back, he makes all the plays as shortstop, and he had, probably 5 or 6 hits in the Olympic Games. I mean, he elevated his game, but he didn't try to do something that he wasn't capable of doing, and he actually got better. And that's the key. And I take that right now. I even tell my son, hey, just be the best version of yourself. And that's going to stick with me as a scout or a coach for the rest of my career.
Ernie, what was the toughest thing in the Olympics? Talk about the process. Is it setting up the pitching staff? I think you guys had a young pitching staff and an experienced lineup, from what I understand. Talk a little bit about that, the difficulties on how, who you're playing and who's going to be pitching, and you got another game the next day, and and if you lose one game, that might change the process. Talk a little bit about that.
So that was difficult. The pitching aspect of it. I mean, because in such a short tournament, you kind of want to line your pitchers up, game by game, in hopes that you make the championship games. So you almost work backwards, so to speak. Well, which guy do I want a championship game? Which guy do I want to get me to the championship game? And so forth. So, I mean, it works out better that way, to work it backwards, opposed to, we're going to pitch this guy in this game and then go from there. But we had a plan with our guys, and each guy knew their role, and they performed it. I mean, the pitching staff was unbelievable. Our hitters, they competed. They gave us a chance to win ball games, and that's all you want. You want your hitters to compete, and you want your pitchers to keep you in the game.
The other part of this is your coaching staff. Here we are, you go to the qualifier, then you've got some training that's going to go on before you get to the Olympics. Did the coaches already know each other? How did they come together? What's kind of the process there? Because you guys almost have to get on the same page pretty fast. You don't have a whole season to do that.
Yeah. So when we were putting the team together, we would do Zoom meetings. We would do Zoom meetings, 3, maybe 4 Zoom meetings a week. We always had a group thread of either on GroupMe, where we chatted and offered information and said, well, I saw this guy pitch, or look this guy up and see what he's been doing. So we developed a continuity through Zoom and through GroupMe that allowed us to, to be on the same page, even though we were so far away, and we only had, a short period of time to get to know each other from the qualifying tournament, and then that buffer in between before the Olympics. So it was a chance to get to know the guys really, really well. And we still, to this day, we still send messages on GroupMe, even though we've been out of the Olympics. If some of our guys have been pitching well or playing well. Shane, we were all on board. Shane Bass through game 2 of the division playoffs. I mean, Shane Bass was one of our starters in the Olympics. And what's ironic about that whole team is that from the Olympics until the season's end, we had 13 different players that went to the major leagues from that ball club out of 24. And that's unbelievable. So all the guys that – I always say all the guys that turned us down, you really missed out, because I always say in minor leagues, you'll never play a meaningful game in the minors, but you will play plenty of meaningful games at the international level, because every game you play at international level, it's almost a game 7 scenario. Pressure's on you. And those guys that went to the big leagues, even the guys that were, on playoff rosters, they understood pressure because there's no pressure on you in the minor leagues. You're gonna play 142 games. If you're a prospect, it doesn't matter if you go 0 for 4 today, you're playing tomorrow, or you're playing the next day. Unfortunately, in international competition, there may not be a next day. 0 for 4 or 0 for 8, you may not play the next game. And that's just how it is. I mean, we're trying to win today, and that's why we wanted everybody to commit to being a team first type player.
That makes so much sense because, from pitch one, the pressure's on. You've got to be able to compete. You've got to be able to, produce. So that is a lot of pressure. That's a great point. I'd love to be a fly in that wall in some of those Zoom meetings because I'm sure as a coach, I would have loved to have been there and just listening to all that. And the other part of all this, which was not easy. Now, the Zoom calls, I'm sure, became a little leisure because we were used to that for a year and a half with the pandemic. We've all been on Zoom. But the other part of it is, you guys had to deal with the pandemic in Japan, all the security, all the protocols there, no fans. Now, I know some of the players were used to no fans, if they were at the big league level a year before. Some of the minor league guys may not even have played that year. But talk about the difficulties of that situation, not having the fans there or even being isolated in your hotel at times.
Well, you know what? It wasn't as difficult as people may think or people on the outside may think, because the players knew exactly what they needed to do. And if you need fans to get you pumped up in a Olympic game or, the bottom of the ninth and it's a 6-6 tie, if you need fans to get you fired up, then you're playing the wrong game. You're playing wrong sports. That internal drive should make you want to compete and get the job done. So the fans there, it wasn't a factor, so to speak. It actually may have helped some teams because, you take the crowd out of the game, when the home team's playing. So, when the only team that it may have affected, that extra little boost would have been, Team Japan, but other than that, I mean, the other countries, they probably felt a little bit looser, not as tight. And, I say it was an unbelievable event because the games were so competitive, throughout the tournament.
Yeah, and I want to get to that. Well, that's something I think is important to talk about. We're talking about the Olympics here, some of the best countries in the world competing there. And, Japan, whether it be Korea, whether it be the Dominican Republic, I mean, you're just facing a loaded teams up and down all those clubs. Talk about the competition, how tough it was and what it took to get to the next level, to get to that gold medal.
I mean, it was extremely tough. I mean, we played well, and, we kind of, the one game we lost to Japan, we were actually, one of the 2 games we lost to Japan, we were actually winning pretty much the later in the game, and they came back and won the game in extras. But, it was tough, man, because those teams, they're out there winning, man. They're out there competing. They're out there, pitching their best guys. I mean, Japan had quite a few pitchers that had unbelievable stuff. Dominican pitchers, they had good stuff. They had, a couple veteran hitters that could change the ball game with one swing, and that I almost look at games like that as being like a UFC fight. One punch could knock you out. And there was players on each team, regardless if the team was not as good as the other team. You put one guy on, 2 guys on, and Ian Kinsler comes to the plate with Team Israel and hits 3-run homer. Now, hey, anything's possible. because you have guys that's done it before, and you have guys that have pride in their play and their ability to want to compete and win the ball game.
Yeah, not taking anything away from the Japanese. A great baseball country, incredible.
Right.
I always learn something from them. They have a little bit of a benefit. Their players have played in this events before. They played together a lot of times. Sometimes they have the ability to train even together a little bit longer. The Japanese are unique. I mean, when you're competing against Japanese, what does it take for a club to beat them? I mean, what do you have to do more than anything?
For me, is you play the game, you play your game. If you're an aggressive team, stay aggressive. Put the pressure on them. What I've noticed, because I played in Japan and I've played international and coached against teams from Asia, they tend to not make a lot of mistakes. So you want to force them into things that they're not accustomed to do. So, they really don't do a good job of, when they cut the ball off, they hit the command. They don't miss many cutoff men. So how do you compound that? So you compound that by, you put pressure on the defense, you go hard, you take extra base, and you get them out of their comfort zone. And if you do that, you got a really good chance to win the game. If you just kind of go with the flow and kind of, take what they give you, then for me, you're playing into their hands.
Ernie, the other thing is I was reading a little story I heard about you and little motivation that you gave the team prior to going to the Olympics, because you won the gold medal in 2000. And so, I mean, and I thought it was kind of interesting because I think, everybody needs a little motivation, right? I mean, even
right.
whether you're a big league player, minor league player, talk about that story, because I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I mean, I brought my gold medal to the right before we took off from Cary, North Carolina. And I just wanted to, pass it around and show the guys and get up and talk to them about, how much that meant to me, how much it meant to our organization. When I say our organization, USA Baseball. And not only did it mean that much, it meant, the lifelong friends that I have, from that 2000 team. I mean, every year, September 27th, even if I don't hear from guys, I'll hear from them on that day, because we always say, happy anniversary, and they always send emojis that like they're turning up a glass of champagne. It's hard. It's hard to win. And I was explaining that to them, but I said it's hard to win, but it's easy. It'll be easier if everyone buys into what we're trying to do. And, it was an awesome ride. I tell you what, it was an awesome ride.
And finally, man, I'll tell you what, I want to get to this because, baseball is growing all over the world. But again, some of the strongest teams in the world come from North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean islands. You managed in the Pan Am Games, you coached in them, you played. Talk about your thoughts of Latin America, the development that's developed, with players there. And, I mean, how many great players are coming out of there? And we're not even talking about Cuba. Cuba's got so many players in the big leagues, and that's not even a country that's opened up yet. Imagine when Cuba opens up. But talk about Latin America and how great their players and coaches and executives are in developing the game.
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, just look at. So we had two teams from Latin America make the Olympics. I mean, Mexico for the first time, and I think maybe Dominican for the first time. Dominican had their first ever medal in baseball, and very easily, if it were expanded, you could very easily take 4 or 5 teams from Latin America, or you could take 4 or 5 teams from the Americas, period. And for me, I would love to see an expanded amount of teams to make it, because I think it would grow the sport or grow the event even better. I think it would put it on a more a higher level, because there's a lot of players that are really good, not only here in the U.S., Canada, Latin America countries, Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Cuba, just to name a few. But there's some players that really would be able to stand out. And it's unfortunate that, only 2 Latin America teams, made the Olympics, because it could have been 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we should expand the teams in the Olympics. Hopefully we will get to that level, because Olympic baseball is exciting. It's competitive. I want to give a little shout out to Curacao, player ratio as far as population to ratio. They've got the most big leaguers in Major League Baseball. It's an incredible accomplishment. Ernie, man, this has been great. I know you're getting it ready to go to the gym. First guest on COPABE Play Ball. Got to thank you, man. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Hey, that's an honor. I'd like to thank you guys. That's a thrill for me, especially being involved in international play now for 21 years. And this is a big thanks to you guys for inviting me on and letting me talk. Not too much, but letting me talk.
No, we keep it short and sweet and get to the point, and we get things rolling here. But folks, man, Ernie Young, what a thrill to have him as our first guest on COPABE Play Ball. I also want to thank our executives at COPABE. Again, remember, Confederation of Pan American Baseball represents countries in North, South, Central America, and the Caribbean. Incredible. Thanks for having me also as your host, Pete Caliendo. Ernie, wish you the best. See you soon, buddy.
Thank you. I got that Olympic baseball for you too, by the way.
All right. Listen to that, folks. Olympic baseball from Ernie Young and the team. That will be front and center right here on my shelf, the #1 ball. Thanks, Ernie. Hey, folks,
right.
Thanks for joining COPABE Play Ball. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. We'll see you on the next show.